guess perhaps fittingly, given that we're here in Georgia, we're from the cross-border business team. And what that team's all about is connecting people and businesses across different countries and thinking about all of the challenges that might entail, whether that is language or currency or even something as simple as t-shirt size. Our aim is to build products to make those things easier for the people and advertisers on our platform. And so we're here to talk to you about data-driven product development, and specifically how data science, in my case, and product experience analytics, in Timothy's case, are different and what that means.
So what is data-driven product development? I guess we should first talk about what this means in the context of Facebook. And so first we should talk about what is a product, or how does Facebook define a product. We can either think of it as standalone apps, such as Facebook, Messenger, or Instagram, or a sub-feature of a product, such as Newsfeed in Facebook. Or in our case, it would actually be an advertiser-facing solutions team. In a lot of companies, analytics functions tend to be siloed or set aside within the company, where they tend to operate as support teams or service teams for the products that they're looking to develop. However, at Facebook, the analytics functions are actually embedded directly in the product team, and there's not really a distinction between where analytics ends and where the product team begins. And so as a member of a product team, we're actually all equally responsible for the development of that product, rather than just the delivery of an analysis or a model that might fit into a product.
So then if we think about, we've got these analytics functions which are embedded in the product teams, and they're working really, really closely with everyone on that team when it comes to development. What does that actually mean from an analytics perspective? And we've kind of talked about data science and product experience. What do those two terms mean, and how do they relate to each other? So analytics as a whole exists to help the product team to use data to make better decisions, whether that's deciding what to build next, or whether to understand whether the thing you've built is working well or not, to find any problems, find bugs, or find new opportunities for future development. And so we can break that down into the kind of the data science side of things, which is that initial opportunity identification and understanding kind of the growth and the way people are using that product. And then the product experience side of things, which is more about the quality of the user experience and specifically like what issues people might be encountering while they're using it on a kind of day-to-day basis. So one is, I guess, more kind of identifying opportunities and looking a bit more into the future and growth of the product. And the other one is saying, how are people using this? What are they actually experiencing on a day-to-day basis? And so we do this by using data to learn and iterate all the way through the product lifecycle. So I'm sure you've probably heard the kind of Facebook motto of kind of move fast and break things, which changed a little bit over time. The original kind of one was move fast and don't be afraid to break things. And the idea behind this is it's all about iterating and getting something out which you can then learn from and improve and build on. And obviously using data is a really important part of that. So if you kind of break down the product lifecycle, the first thing you want to do is define what it is that you want to do at all. And this is where data science is involved, and it's about observing behaviors. So one of the things which our kind of VP of Analytics talks about quite a lot is what he calls empathy at scale. And what that means is using data to understand the behavior of your users in a kind of very broad way that you couldn't do by getting them into a room, by surveying them, by talking to them one by one. And whether you have any sort of product, whether it's a social network or whether it's a pizza delivery app or whatever, once you have more than a couple of hundred people using it, it's just not possible to talk to all of those people in a kind of normal sort of setting. You have to use data to understand their behavior and understand the problems that they're facing in using that. And so where this is helpful is you can kind of pick up on what we call like emergent behaviors. So if we see people doing something which maybe we didn't understand, that's a great sign that there's probably something new that we should build to make that easier for them. And this is where the kind of the data aspect comes in. So we've observed this behavior, what should we then do in order to go and help? So then you have the kind of explore part of that, which is, okay, we've seen that something's happening, but how prevalent is that? Is it a big enough thing to be worth going into in more detail? And what would be the potential impact if we were going to actually go and build something to try and address this? Then you kind of focus in on exactly what it is you're trying to achieve. And Facebook's quite a metric-driven organization, so we really like kind of tracking progress, using data to understand how we're progressing against our goals and the things we're trying to achieve. And so when you think about rolling out a new product, one of the things that you want to say is, well, how do we define success for this product? How do we know that we've done a good job here? How do we know that people are finding this useful? And so that's where you define your metrics, you kind of set some maybe short-term and long-term goals, and then start to understand what success would look like. And this refined stage, this is where I'm talking about kind of iterating and learning from how people are using it. So this question of, is our product successful? Is it moving the metrics which we thought it would? Are people having a good experience? Are we retaining the people who are using it? And this is a really, really important part for PXA, to understand exactly the experience that people are having as they're going through that. Then you might need to revisit things. So if some things aren't perhaps growing the way you wanted to, or if you find that there are totally different use cases you didn't account for, or if people are having problems, then you kind of loop back around again and say, okay, well, what do we need to change? What are the new metrics we're interested in? And do we need to kind of change our definition of success? And what does our new product look like when we maybe release a version 2? And then you kind of right back to the beginning again on the define stage, because you probably identified a new behavior, and then you're back to a kind of new type of product. So that's a kind of brief overview of how we think about product development and how analytics fits into it as you go through.
And so how does this work in practice? If we use a really concrete example of an emergent behavior, there's, as you may know, there's over 2 billion people on Facebook, and so that means there's more than 2 billion posts per day. And if we go back a couple years, you can see that people started like posting things where they were selling products, like 2015. And where, like, one of the biggest questions at Facebook is, like, what are people actually doing? So how do you find the signal of somebody posting but actually trying to sell something? And then what does it look like, what should it look like that we build in order to address this use case?
Exactly. So picking up on this emergent behavior, this is something which analytics spotted kind of a few years back. And we saw people were doing these listings, but kind of it's not a great experience. So if I want to sell my truck, I've put a post maybe on my personal Facebook. Maybe I'm going to share it around in a few groups. There might be some people in my nearby area. Maybe there's a for sale in London group that I could share this into. But it's quite a manual process. And if I'm someone who wants to buy a truck, then it's not a great experience for me either, because I have to go hunting around for these things. I then kind of have to message this person directly. They might be wondering, who's this random person who's talking to me? It's not a great experience. But the fact that people were doing this was an amazing signal from a data perspective that there was really a kind of appetite and a need for this sort of experience on Facebook. And so this is why we built Marketplace. And for those of you that haven't seen it, this is what Marketplace looks like. If you open up your Facebook app on your phone, it's kind of the middle tab with a little picture of a shop on it, or you can get to it on desktop as well. And you can see that it's a very, very different experience to what you'd normally see on Newsfeed. You've got kind of different categories of products. You can search down into different groups. You can filter. There are advanced filters within certain categories. And it's much, much easier to discover the things which are around you for sale. You can get a quick listing of here are the products, here are the prices, and then by clicking on one of them, it starts a message with the person listing it automatically. So
Can you please talk a bit louder?
Yeah, of course.
Cool.
I'll move this
Thank
closer
you.
to my mouth as well. There we go. So in fact, I'll just play this video again. And while this is playing, if you have a think about the two different sides of data analytics, the kind of data science sense and the product experience sense, thinking about this experience, what would those two different functions be thinking about and wanting to look at in the data that's coming out of it as this person's using this product? And you can ask the same sort of questions as well for the experience of listing. So if I wanted to put a new post up on here, you can hit the sell something on Marketplace button. I can put in the price, I can give it a description, upload a picture, and it then becomes as part of this overall listing. There we go. So that's my truck listing completed. So if we think about that one product, which is Marketplace, and then the two different perspectives of data science and product experience, what are the questions which we're asking as we go through? So on the data science front, we talked about this at the beginning, the identification of the initial opportunity. So spotting the emergent behavior, realizing that there was a need for this product in the first place, which then led to, I guess, Marketplace being rolled out. So then you're interested in adoption. So how many people are using this? Which countries are they using it in? What sort of things are they listing, and are they getting value from it? Retention is really important, particularly for a new product. So are people just trying it once and then they're going off and doing something else again? Or are they actually kind of coming back, using it day after day or week after week and finding real value from it? And I guess also understanding the user behavior. So do we see that people now aren't listing things on their personal profiles, and are they just using this for all of their listings? Because if so, that kind of shows us that it fits the need that we've identified for them. And finally, are there any other opportunities? So do we see that people are using this in maybe a different way to we expected, and actually we need a totally new category on here of jobs or houses to rent, rather than just products or cars or kind of other bits and bobs?
Whereas on the product experience side, it would be more things around how are advertisers or users actually using the products that we built? Are they actually using them in the way that we intended them to build, or is it broken in some way? Or in a lot of cases, what else did we break by building this? So it can be things such as like failed purchases, filters not returning results, what we should do about having categories that have no results in certain locations, how are listings created in this funnel, the completeness of listings, and if people are actually getting the information that they need, and the correctness of how users are actually classifying their listings, and if there's actually a more intelligent way that we should be suggesting listing categories or just relisting them.
Exactly. And these are all the sort of things where we'd be looking to iterate and refine and improve things over time. And so having the data to kind of understand and learn from is really, really important. And so then in terms of the actual data we're using to do this analysis and make these decisions, again, it falls into two different categories, whether you're talking about data science or product experience. So on the data science front, we tend to take a kind of broader, shallower approach. Using aggregate data, we're interested in growth, we're interested in retention, and in those ecosystem metrics. So outside of marketplace, what does kind of overall posting, overall sharing, and things like that look like as well?
Yeah, we're on the product experience side, we'd be using a much more narrow, deeper use of data sets. So it'd be very user-centric event data, which can then be rolled into actual individual journeys, or the breakdown in those journeys, which would be then the pain points that users or advertisers are having with the products that we built and the products that still exist.
Exactly. So I guess thinking about it like this, it maybe sounds difficult to justify having kind of two different data analytics functions doing kind of fairly similar sounding things. But there are a couple of different reasons why it's important to make that distinction between data science and product experience. So the first thing is, as you've probably seen as we go through, that they have very different focuses in terms of what they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to understand. So data science is about, I guess, identifying opportunities and then growing them. Whereas product experience, the kind of main stakeholder there is the people kind of using that product day in, day out, and whether or not they're having a good time using it. And those two things can sometimes conflict. And if you're pushing really hard to grow something, then actually you might kind of compromise on the experience in order to get something out early. And so it's important to have a healthy tension between these two functions, and having them as different people then obviously makes that a bit easier.
And don't underestimate the tension and how much you can actually gain from arguing with somebody and having a different standpoint.
But in a good way.
Yeah.
But the other benefit to this as well is that they tend to exist at different places in the product lifecycle. So going back to that diagram that I had earlier, data science kind of very much fits in at the define, explore, and focus stages, where you're kind of identifying these opportunities and working out what success looks like and how to measure it. Whereas product experience then fits in at the kind of focus, refine, and revisit, where you've got something out there, you're understanding how people are using it and what problems they're having. And this staggering means that actually you can then kind of divide and conquer. And so if you imagine that this next set of arrows down here is a new product, maybe something totally different that we're wanting to look at the same time, then data science can kind of switch focus and start looking at the next opportunity, while product experience is still safeguarding the users who are using the first thing that you've built. And so I guess hopefully you're sold on why data science and product experience are both equally important in product development. And so I guess what does it look like from a skills perspective, and from how you maybe go about integrating these two roles into a company?
So if we have the two different roles, data science and product experience, the overlap is clearly quantitative analysis, visualization, communication, scripting, and SQL. But if we look at things that are unique to those two roles, data science tends to have a deeper usage of stats on a day-to-day basis through A/B testing, etc. Whereas product experience would be much more technical, coming from a development background. If we look at how that plays out in interactions within the actual product team, you can see that the data scientists tend to gravitate more towards product managers, engineering managers, and the product marketing teams or roles. Whereas with product experience, they tend to focus on the design and UX functions within a product team, the content functions, as well as the actual engineers or programmers in that team.
And I guess that's why the development experience background can come in so helpful, because when you're working day in, day out with engineers and with designers, being able to kind of talk that language and understand how that relates is really important.
As well as the languages of designers and UX, which is a bit...
Very, very true. Great. I think that was everything we wanted to talk about. Thanks for listening.